Hello and welcome back to the Fun Reborn. We start off where we left off on our Dark Souls 1 journey in front of, here with the lovely clanking of our blacksmith friend. And he's going to come back into play in this particular section. I thought this section was going to be very minimalist, but it turns out there's more going on that I can talk about, which, blessing and a curse, I suppose. Yeah, this strange room again. I don't have anything to add from last time, but what we are doing is we're going to do probably the upstairs portion, probably. Ah, yes, I have things. Alright, so I've got to take this a little more carefully than I expected. Oh wow, he will chase you pretty far, won't he? It's kind of interesting. He looks a lot like the Knights in the Cathedral of the Deep in terms of his size and... Having two people on this is frustrating. I generally don't want to fight him in such a tight spot either. Or in a tight spot. This is less than ideal. We're gonna just chip away, chip away. Ah, the little guy's finally gotten ahead. Oh boy, missing that was less than I... Oof. Oh boy. Wow, he will come in here. And you're drinking, so that's lovely. He does leash eventually. Oh, you. Whiffing with the mace kind of sucks, doesn't it? And now that he's in a room, I can get behind him and probably make this a little easier on me. Yeah, there we go. That was not how we planned it, but I forgot he was still up. I think he doesn't return. Interesting model, though, now that I am forced to actually look at it again. Your shots annoyed me audibly, so... I will come back, I think, to here. But keep this statue in mind. Firekeeper's Soul is... might have an interesting item description. I don't remember particularly this one. There's another one that I want to talk about later. Yeah, this one is pretty straightforward. Draw from humanity offered to her. Not by infinite human. There's not a lot. This one's pretty vague, relatively speaking. All of the guards here are anticipating a front entry, which we aren't doing. And we're gonna just go ahead and go down. This is, you know, super unideal. Probably gonna have to do this again, because I haven't really plotted things out, because I didn't expect to fight that guy. Phew, okay, so... I always regret... I dread sometimes coming back to Dark Souls 1 because of the things I'm playing in this series. It's by far the most abstract. I talked about in Bloodborne that we have a pattern between going through abstract and very specific bosses, named ones, and then more generalized terms. Dark Souls 1, though, is abstract most of the game, not even purely in bosses, but also in Also, when it comes to the areas themselves, if you think about it, you do not get to a purely named boss using the Sire Keeper Soul to reinforce our Estus Flask. You don't get to a named boss in these games until 3 bosses from where I'm at currently, and then you get a second one a couple bosses, like 2 bosses later. You'll have 2 named bosses by the time you hit what I guess is arguably the half point of the game. Most of everything you encounter in these games are, very vaguely described. You have to continue pumping faith, because I want to have 25 before going to an area upcoming. I don't even know if this is ideal. I don't particularly care. We're gonna reverse hollowing for a thing. This might be a huge mistake. Not yet. Okay, so these games are abstracted, far more so than the other games, and that makes them hard to talk about, but I have uncovered some things that will make this particular segment a little more interesting. Anyway, we have our 10 Estus Flasks back. That'll be useful. This is one of the sketchier parts of this area. I don't think it'll go too badly, but I am not especially comfortable with using a mace, so... This dude is, I feel, a very particular named mob. I don't know who. Him whiffing on the stairs is nice. Useful for us. That went pretty well. I shouldn't say after literally everything I do. This next segment can be a little sketchy as well. The Channeler is an interesting enemy. He is portrayed as both a buffer of NPCs and also as I love going through walls like that. He is buffing them. Makes them considerably more dangerous. There's an area in Dark Souls, or in Bloodborne, that is shortly upcoming that will have a very similar dynamic. I really should just two-hand and do that. Clear him in one hit. Nice and... well, assuming you don't miss. Alright. Broken Straight Sword. That's interesting, a callback to what we were starting with in the Asylum. And I think that should get most of his minions, leaving him alone, which is ideal. That was risky. Huh. Waking up the guards is not the best thing, but we got him down. He will not respawn. Anyway, he's defined in our minds as a sort of kidnapper. That is a motif that comes back very distinctly in Bloodborne in particular. And that second hit comes so slowly. Oh, there's a third one. Yeah, of course there's a third one. I got pretty good tracking on that. Smooth again. Alright, so we have a chapel. Chapels have a very usual setup in these games. I kind of would like to find out what this chapel is specifically based off of. It feels reminiscent of maybe some things that I've looked up in various British ones, but then there's more to it than that. The statues themselves almost look rather Grecian. There are a couple chapels in upcoming games that will be reminiscent. With that cleared, I think we can come out here. Get the halberd. Not especially exciting, although there is one interesting thing that we will remark about later. Last one for good measure. The basement key. That is, again, useful later on, but we'll look at it now. Not much going on there besides foreshadowing. We can open up this to help us in the future for traveling. The next segment is familiar, but there is no boar anymore. Like the Chandler, and I believe like the one guarding the Firekeeper soul. All of those are one-time spawns. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about one thing while we're here. In the design works, we have a design works, that is the interview they did after Dark Souls 1. And they talk about how Gwyn was originally going to be designed as an NPC that pushes a statue outside of a shrine or inside of a shrine so that you can progress downwards. This is one possible location where that could have been intended originally. This was a very similar setup. You can imagine him pushing this out of the way and opening a passage down there. You could also see the same thing happening at the Firelink Shrine and the lightly flooded temple that they have set up there. What I would remark upon is that setup is extremely similar to how you enter the Frida fight in Dark Souls 3. There's a case where they will talk about wanting to do things with a game that they had to eventually cut for whatever reason. And instead of abandoning it, they will recreate it later on. And I think this is one of the first examples we've run into of that. This idea of just never giving up on your dreams. Really inspiring, right? So we've got all these barrels. I've always found them kind of peculiar, the degree to which they are tied up. It's odd for a barrel to have that kind of thing. It's almost more, you could almost imagine it more for human trafficking to keep a thing inside, but, you know, I guess if you were, like, transporting some liquid, maybe tying would help. We have this fellow again. Ooh, I think that stance is nasty. If I remember correctly, that will shield break. Oh, those stairs are really, really, really handy. He's trying to drink. It's kind of neat, the degree to which the enemies can be read like that. So this is a very peculiar segment. All of these chairs here with tiny, tiny windows. I have trouble figuring out what this could actually be trying to convey. It feels almost like a detention hall. We come to this segment. small tabling. We have a person in a barrel, like I said. Maybe an implication that they were used for trafficking? I don't know. One humanity. If I remember correctly, yeah. We go upstairs. We have here one of the very, very common prisoner motifs.
Oh, still human, are you? Then I am in luck. Could you help me? As you can see, I am stuck without recourse.
Alright, so there's a lot of things you can do. I'm going to help him, because that's the plot line that I need to talk about the most. We use our mystery key from the barracks earlier, and it is very tempting to just kill this guy. He drops a really nice ring to have at the very start of the game.
Thank you. Yes, sincerely. I am Knight Lautrec of Kari. I truly appreciate this. And I guarantee a reward. Only later.
Very sinister sounding.
Yes, very sorry. Your reward will have to wait. I've just been freed. Allow me some time.
One of the things that are particularly funny about this fellow is that for all the talk that Yosefka, imposter Yosefka, get in Bloodborne, my understanding is that Lautrec has two different voice actors. I don't know when that changes, but one of the voice actors also voices Patches. Given that Patches has, instead of a history, let's say a future in terms of stealing armor, it seems rather suggestive that he has, at one point, voices Lautrec. Does Patches at some point impersonate Lautrec after stealing his armor? It's something to consider. Lautrec is complicated. I do not have him completely figured out, but there are big things to come for him. I think he should be back at the Shrine. My understanding is that gotta do the high roll. My understanding is that you either need to talk to him or here or use a fire to get him as a summonable, and I think I'm going to do that. Like, I wouldn't normally, but since we're talking about story, the NPCs that you can use for certain bosses are part of that story. Alright. And since I'm close enough, we can go ahead and pop some, I think. I need 1660, so we're pretty close. Not that this will actually be terribly helpful for the fight, but whatever. We're going to reverse hollowing so that we can summon. I imagine Lautrec might not show up here until the bell is rung. Nope, I was wrong. You get a better look at his armor, how extremely brassy it is.
Hello there. I have your reward. Please, accept it. I am grateful to you for freeing me. Not enough for you? Well, let's not be greedy now.
His voice gets more and more sinister. With that, I want to talk a little bit about Lautrec's armor. It gets talked about a lot in the design interview. Logic himself, I kind of wonder if he is a reference to this particular fellow from France. I don't have a lot to say about that at the moment, but it is kind of a name similarity that is worth considering. This is his armor. It is described as the armor of the embraced, and as you can see, there's almost a feeling of two arms holding him, keeping him cradled. And that's an intriguing sort of motif. But there is one other armor set later on that I'm very much reminded of when I see this, and that's the Badman set from Bloodborne. If you consider it, it's almost like he's wrapped up in snakes, which could be an intentional parallel that they're trying to draw. I can't say for sure, but I thought I'd bring it up. Moving back, we have talked to Lautrec, we've gotten our Sunlight Medal. Him having a Sunlight Medal is kind of interesting on its own. Sorry, mouse management, getting the cursor off my screen. Him having a medal's interesting on his own because he's very much not part of the Sunlight Covenant. We will be summoning, I think, 2 NPCs for this. One is Solaire, our Sunseeker, and he will have a yellow summoning sign signifying that he's a member of the Covenant, whereas Lautrec won't. Is that a sign that Solaire helped Lautrec in Lautrec's storyline? It is interesting that both of them, I keep using the word interesting, I need to come up with some synonyms, but both of them are summonable for this fight, like with the Cleric Beast fight, where you had both Gascoigne and Alfred available. It kind of points to the idea of either cooperation or 2 different storylines, that the boss stands in for 2 different... Smash those toes. He is so poorly equipped for like fighting on a higher level of stairs. Yeah, here comes your drinky. Huh. Ooh. Okay, I did not want to attack during that, but I had an itchy trigger finger. So we're human, can't tell with the Boarhound, but first time doing that this playthrough. Our Chandler is gone, our Hollow Friends are not. Eesh. Oh my, I do not want to, use up my humanity that soon. It's not like hard enemies, but there are a lot of them. Gonna safety strat this, it's shameful, but... Peace. So I guess faith is not entirely useless. After how smooth the Bloodborne was, this is... Oh my. Shush. Yeah. Alright, so... This is fun. I'm so much more used to the elevators in other games. This one's much less responsive. In any case, we are going back up. We're going to clear out the rest of those hollows. And then we should be able to summon people and be ready for the fight that will end this section, so... Despite the less than ideal pathing, it should be a quick one, especially compared to that first monster of an hour-long video. More broken straight swords? Yeah, you know it. The way the light hits there is interesting. I think there's more in here. Yeah, he's really excited. We have our first summon. Lotric. Lotric has a storyline with Kirim. I don't have enough to talk about that at the moment. That one is broad and confusing. He uses some very typical Kareem weapons. He just jumped into a pit. Teamwork. The Chartels go around shields, so it suggests that Karim enjoyed using two-handed styles or dual-wielding styles, and were fighting as people who use shields extensively. He's also related to the goddess Fina, who is the named patron for this particular run. And here we bring in Solaire. It's probably going to make this fight rather easy, but it's fine. Praise that sun, yeah? And here we go. Probably not gonna get that tail. Good job, Lotric. Sunbros win. Alright, so lots going on there. More so than I expected. First of all, the video that introduced the gargoyles kind of suggested the idea of breaking out of stone, of something that has been petrified and is trying to fight that off. That's a theme that will come up a lot in various instances within all of these games. Aside from that, let's go to some of the items that we could have gotten in that fight but didn't because they're all random and such. We're going to cut to some lovely browser stuff. So, the Bell Gargoyle drops Twin Humanities. We'll come back to that. The halberd and shield and helm all have descriptions that suggest that they are made of bronze. They also suggest that the skin is tough by itself. The shield may have been a prop. There's a confusion on the part of the perceiver as to why these enemies are using things to protect themselves when it's not really obviously necessary for them. They also talk about in the Design Works interview having the design process for these and wanting to get across the theme that these enemies are more technologically advanced than you would otherwise assume. I think that within this is an implication that these were not originally gargoyles. These are originally something that was more or less human-like. It became a gargoyle, and it kept its human things, its armor, as sort of a sense of maintaining that link to humanity. It's not a theme that we don't see elsewhere. For example, in Bloodborne, we have the Lost Children of Antiquity. Definitely gargoyles, but has an implication of a more human origin within that face design. Now, what I want to really talk about this is the twin humanity. This is one of the very few bosses in the game that drop twin humanities, and there's a question in my mind, why not? If you wanted to have that, just have it drop two humanities. Programming-wise, that would be easier. Therefore, this is probably intended on some level, as a narrative element. With that said, people will point out in this fight that there are two gargoyles, and that one begins the fight at half health and only shows up after the first one has been injured. People have suggested that the second one is missing a tail. People have suggested that, and I think it's a little smaller, so people have suggested that it's a mother and a child. Other people have gone against that suggestion, and I think I want to offer a different direction. You get twin humanities, so what if these are twins, brothers or sisters? The tail is not something that the gargoyle wields, it's something that is physically part of its body that we are taking from it and turning into a weapon. That is a theme that shows up all over these games. And one of the most interesting things about this is that it doubles your bleeding, poison, and toxin resistance. So hypothetically, that tail for it provides the same thing it provides for us as a weapon, resistance to being poisoned. And suppose you had one of your siblings who was born somewhat crippled, not physically frail, missing a tail, and vulnerable to poison because of it. I would suggest that if you look at it in this way, this motif that we're seeing in the gargoyles is something that is repeated not only once, but at least twice in upcoming sections of the game. And I will leave it to the viewers to try to think about what those could be, but I don't know, I feel that they're kind of obvious, and maybe I'm wrong here. Readjusting the mouse again. Switching back and forth between browser and this is an interesting challenge. I don't think there's anything terribly interesting around this portion of the building. We're just climbing up to the belfry. Again, multiple stairs, nothing really on them. And so there's always a question of what does ringing a bell actually signify? It feels almost like an absolute floating signature, it feels like you're enacting a ritual. You're repeating something that is meant to symbolize a part of a previous myth. It's a floating signifier. It is not something that means anything in and of itself so much as it points to a part in a different story. So instead of thinking of the question of what does ringing the bell mean, it might be better to phrase it, what could ringing the bell mean? What kind of things could you put in there and then make sense of it? Because it's very possible that there isn't a single answer so much as it's intended to be an answer in multiple directions. You might even say the same thing about Linking the Flame, that it is a ritual course, and what it means is something that is specific to who would have originally done it, and the symbolism within both the bell and the flame is not set. Anyway, we ring the bell and this fellow shows up. I wish I had a lot more to say about him. I'm absolutely certain something's going on here, but I think I need more Dark Souls 2 knowledge to figure it out.
Greetings. I am Oswald of Kareem, the Palm. Thou art a friend. For thee, a warm welcome. Cometh thou to confess, or to accuse? For indeed all sin is my domain.
Some interesting items. I want to talk about Purging Stones, but that will be later. It brings up Arstor, the Earl of Kareem. We also first hear about Velka, the Goddess of Sin, and the Blades of the Dark Moon in this particular item. They both become something that is subtly important. We again get more Homeward Bones. We got the Book of the Guilty, which again talks about Velka and Dark Moon. We have a miracle that we can buy that we're not going to buy yet, but we will actually have the faith to use it. We have a talisman. I truthfully do not know. Oh yeah, this talisman scales with intelligence, so it's not going to be useful for us, but it's an intriguing sort of like preview into dark miracles that will show up in later games, as well as, I guess, hexes in Dark Souls 2. And we also have rings, which again bring up Sir Arstor. Karim is very much somewhere that's dealing with status effects. In this case, bleeding and poison. Sacrifice is also an item that will repeatedly symbolize Velka's influence. He is here to manage covenants, absolving sin, which is something that I'm not going to talk too much about. It's just a gesture. It's an interesting gesture. And there's no talk option, which is a thing. Nothing interesting to say about that.
Thou art welcome any time. It is only human to commit a sin.
So that's menacing. Having his position here, right below the Bell of Awakening, makes you somewhat consider the possibility that this fight, depending on who is perceiving it, was either a sin or a punishment of sin. That's just a thought, but like I said, try to consider what ringing a bell could mean rather than what it does mean. I think that Dark Souls 1 is intentionally abstract in such a way as to open up these side interpretations. With that said, I think I will close it. This hopefully will be a shorter video. I don't know offhand how long it's been, but I hope it's not been longer than a half hour. I will manage my inventory and stuff, and then we'll come back in Age 2. This concludes the first stage, ringing the Bell of Awakening in Dark Souls 1, and doing some other stuff in the other games. I hope it has been a fun journey, because it's going to ramp up considerably from here on out. Thanks for watching, and may you find your worth in the waking world.